Hey guys, it's Heidi, your dietitian here. This week, I want to talk with you about something that is just always asked during our counseling sessions, and that is sugar. Primarily, is sugar bad for us? So, I want to dig a little bit deeper and I want to give you the inside scoop about sugar. First off, sugar is just one type of carbohydrates. There are three types of carbohydrates, which are fiber, starches, and sugars. So veggies, grains, fruits, potatoes, candy, soda, all of that sort of stuff, those are all types of carbohydrates, but they fall under those three different categories, either fibers, sugars, or starches. So if I were to ask you, what's the first thing that comes to mind if you're thinking about sugar? For many of you, it might be soda, or it might be candy, it might be table sugar, and some of you guys might even think of like alcohol. Funny thing there, alcohol actually ferments the sugar in order to get the alcoholic product. So really what's being added is your added sugar in juices or in grenadine or anything to kind of make it sweet. That's where your sugar is coming into play. So I want to start off with the first question, which is sugar bad for us? And unfortunately, it's not so black and white. There is no yes or no answer. It's actually in between in that gray area. The American Heart Association recommends limiting something called added sugar, which is a term you've probably heard before. And I want to talk about it a little bit more in detail. So for men are recommended to limit their daily added sugar intake to about 9 grams, which looks like this. 9 grams of added sugar. Women, you have a little bit of a short end of the stick here because we, as women, are recommended by the American Heart Association to limit our sugar intake to about 6 grams. So definitely a little bit less than what men have. I'll pull them up together so you can see that difference. This, 9 grams, and this is 6 grams. Another question I get a decent amount of the time is whether or not we should monitor our fruit intake because it's high in sugar. Well, really, I want to talk about this guy real quick. There is 0 grams of added sugar in your fruit. The sugar inside fruit is naturally occurring sugar, and also fruit has a very high nutrient value, which means it's filled with some nice electrolytes, vitamin C, healthy minerals, and fiber, which fiber helps lower cholesterol. So, what are some sources of added sugar that might be kind of hiding in your kitchen? Here are some common ones. Peanut butter. So, the only 2 ingredients that should be seen in peanut butter should be salts and peanuts. If you look at the back of the nutrition label on your peanut butter jar and see that there's also sugar there, that's a hidden culprit of some added sugars. Another thing is condiments. So your ketchup, your barbecue sauce, your hot sauce, your salad dressings. All of those are sources of added sugars. Also sports drinks. You can hydrate yourself simply by drinking enough water, and you can replace your electrolytes simply by having a little snack. There's a lot of added sugar in sports drinks. Also, yogurt. There's some really healthy nutritional benefits to yogurt, but we need to monitor and make sure that we're following the American Heart Association and we're limiting the amount of added sugar that can be found in a lot of popular yogurt packages. And bread. So, I know bread kind of gets a bad rap, and not all bread or grains are bad for you, but some brands actually add molasses or brown sugar in order to make their bread a little bit softer and also a little bit sweeter tasting. With that, along the same lines of grains, is also granola. Prepackaged granola tends to be a high amount of added sugar added to it. This is barbecue sauce. Not a favorite of mine, but favorite of a lot of people, I'm sure. And the proper serving size for barbecue sauce is 1 tablespoon. Here we have it, folks, 1 tablespoon of barbecue sauce. Did you know that this 1 tablespoon of barbecue sauce has 6 grams of added sugar to it? If we were following the American Heart Association guidelines, women, unfortunately, are out of luck because by having that 1 tablespoon of barbecue sauce, you've already met the recommended limited amount of added sugar per day, which is 6 grams. That's 66% for men. Meanwhile, if you had a banana instead, or any sort of serving of fruit, you've had 0 grams of added sugar. So, how do we digest sugar? What happens once we eat it? So, sugar is a type of carbohydrate, and all carbohydrates, including sugars, are broken down mechanically or by chewing, and chemically by enzymes that take place inside the body. And they're broken down into the smaller building blocks, such as fructose, glucose, and galactose. So for example, you've probably heard of the term sucrose before. That's the common table sugar. That's made up of fructose and glucose. What about lactose? That's found in dairy products. You know very well if you might have a lactose allergy, but that's made up of galactose and glucose. Those are the single units that's making up a larger unit. And when we digest, we're breaking it back down into single units. So once this is broken down, the pancreas secretes insulin, which is a hormone. And this allows for these smaller units, these building blocks, to be taken up into the cell and to be used for energy. So whether it's sugar from a banana or sugar inside of a soda, all carbohydrates are digested the same way. I want to give you another visual regarding added sugar and sugar that's naturally occurring inside your fruits, your vegetables, your grains. So how can we identify sources of added sugar? Well, it's pretty much everywhere, unfortunately, especially in a lot of prepackaged food items and some of the ones that I already mentioned a little bit earlier. But if you turn your products around and you look at the nutrition labels and the ingredients, anything that ends in the following is sugar. So sucrose, agave nectar, syrup, molasses, which is often found in bread, honey, brown sugar, raw sugar, invert or invertase sugar, high fructose corn syrup, which is usually found in like your sodas and cereal grain products, cane sugar, cane syrup, malt syrup, also anything that ends in ose. So we mentioned before, sucrose, dextrose, glucose, lactose. That is the chemical suffix of sugar. So if you're planning on cutting back on sugar as a goal for yourself, I ask you to consider, instead of cutting back on sugar, to try cutting back on added sugar. Look at the nutrition label, and below the total carbohydrates, you're going to find an area that says added sugar. Check to see if it is less than or greater than the American Heart Association recommendation of 6 grams for women per day and 9 grams for men. Thanks. See you next week.